Does everyone have their mute on, please? Devices?
Everyone, devices, the mute. If you put your device on mute, please.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right, well,
Right.
I can put this anywhere then. I can put this anywhere. Put it in my pocket. We're ready to begin?
No, that's just the Bookatz. I'll make sure.
We ready, Larry?
That's Mr. Bookatz.
Are we ready to begin? Okay. We come together to pay our respects to a very special human being, a great woman, someone that I had the privilege of knowing for over 2 decades, a great help to my family personally, and I'm sure to thousands of others. And so words really cannot capture the greatness of this beloved spirit. Malka Bas Moshe, attorney Marianne Rabin. But we'll do our best, and I'll begin by asking forgiveness from Marianne if I wronged you in any way, if anyone at Menorah Park. Such a great woman. How could we really pay you the proper honor and respect? Surely we fell short, and I ask you, Mechila, forgiveness from you, from the family. I ask forgiveness for myself, for all of Israel and the world. At this time, we have some people from our synagogue that came to make sure we would have a minyan for this great woman. And so we're going to begin. We're going to ask someone from the family if the staff could guide the individual to lower the aron, and we will recite the Kaddish. Rabbi Hirschfeld has ruled that once the aron is lowered into the kever, there's a certain degree of burial because the aron itself can provide a certain amount of burial, and we'll be able to recite the Kaddish in memory of Malka Bas Moshe. After which time, I want to share some of the beautiful thoughts that we had together, the family and I, and then we'll continue with eulogies. Yeah, well, can he move the?
Yeah, we have to. Okay, 1 second.
Yeah, I'll move away.
Switch. Okay. You'll have to come around.
But you could, we could do it before also. That's good, yeah. we'll make the blessing. Let's recite the blessing together, Dayan Ho'emes, if we could, okay? You repeat after me. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Ha'olam Dayan Ho'emes. Amen. At this time, children will tear the garment over the heart on the left side. At this time, we're going to ask to recite the Kaddish. All right? You want to repeat after me?
Sure.
Okay.
Repeat it.
Okay. Yiskadal,
Yiskadal,
V'yiskadash,
V'yiskadash,
Shemei,
Yomei,
Rabba,
Rabba,
V'yoma,
V'yomo,
V'ivra,
V'ivra,
Hirusei,
Virusei,
V'yamlech,
V'yamlech,
Malchusei,
Mahusei,
V'chayechon,
L'chayekon,
U'v'yomechon,
U'v'yomekon,
U'v'chaye,
U'v'chaye,
Tichol,
Echon,
Beis,
Beis,
Yisrael,
Yisrael,
Bagola,
Bagola,
U'bizman,
U'vizman,
Karev,
Korev,
V'emru,
V'emru.
Amen.
Amen.
Yehei,
Yahei,
Shmei,
Shmei,
Rabba,
Nabo,
Mivora,
Mevora,
Leolam,
Leolam,
Ulomei,
Lomei,
Omaya,
Omayom,
Yispora,
Yispara,
Yishtaba,
Yishtaba,
Yispoa,
Yispa,
Yisromam,
Yismon,
Yisnase,
Yisnase,
Yishador,
Yishadon,
Yisaleh,
Yisale,
Yishalo,
Yisalo,
Shemei,
Shemei,
Ikucha,
Ikucha,
Richu,
Rehu,
Liela,
Liela,
Min,
Min,
Ko,
Um,
Minko,
Minkal,
Birchasa,
Birchosa,
Bishirasa,
Bishirasa,
Tushbechasa,
Kushasa,
Benechemasa,
Benechemasa,
Da'amiran,
Yamiron,
Bioma,
Yoma,
Bimru,
Vimru,
Amen.
Amen,
Yehei,
Yahei,
Shlama,
Shlomo,
Rabba,
Rabba,
Min,
Min,
Shemaya,
Shemaya,
L'chaim,
Bechayim,
Aleinu,
Aleinu,
Bial,
Vial,
Kol,
Kol,
Yisrael,
Israel,
Bimru,
Vimru,
Amen.
Amen.
Oseh Shalom Bimroma,
Ose Shalom Bimroma,
Huyaseh Shalom Aleinu,
Yose Shalom Aleinu,
Vial Kol Yisrael,
Vial Kol Yisrael,
V'yimru Amen.
Vimru, Amen.
You may be seated. This sacred observance that each Jew hopes and prays that when our time comes, we'll leave progeny, loved ones, or friends to remember us through the Kaddish is a great service and a great bliss for the soul of our beloved Malka Bas Moshe Marianne. We're going to begin on this with the blessing that we make when we come to a Beis Chaim, a cemetery, reiterating our belief as the prophets proclaim that death is a temporary phenomenon. And as the great Tiferes Yisrael teaches that God created the caterpillar to teach us a lesson. Just as the caterpillar, it lives its life and then spins itself a tomb. And it seems to us like everything is over. It lies dead in its cocoon like a tomb. And yet the children watch and they see maybe a few months later, not only was that caterpillar not dead, but it bore a hole through the cocoon and emerged not just a caterpillar, but a most beautiful butterfly. And so too the prophets assure us that God will resurrect us by our good deeds. Every mitzvah cloaks our soul. And one day when we return in Tchiat HaMesim, we will be able to see our beautiful loved one, much more beautiful than ever, because now it will be the butterfly as compared to the caterpillar. So when we come to a cemetery, we recite the following blessing. I will recite the blessing, and you can respond, Amen, and then I'll translate. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech olam, asher yotzar eschem badin, v'zan v'chilkel eschem badin, v'hemes eschem badin, v'yodea mispar kulchem badin, v'wasid lachayoschem v'lekayim eschem badin, Baruch atah Adonai, mechaya hamesim. Ata gibor li alam Adonai, mechaya mesim ata rav lo shia, mechalkel chayim b'chesed, mechaya mesim b'rachamim rabim, so meich noflim b'rofen cholim u'matir asurim, u'mekayim emunoso li shenei afor. Mi chamocha bal gibor osimi dom elach, melech memes u'mechaya u'matzmiach Yeshua, v'nemonat alach yos mesim. Blessed are you, Lord our God, ruler of the universe, who fashioned you with justice, nourished and sustained you with justice, took your lives with justice, knows the sum total of you all in justice, and will restore and resuscitate you in justice. Blessed are you, Lord, who revives the dead. You are eternally mighty, Lord, the reviver of the dead are you, abundantly to save. God sustains the living with kindness, revives the dead with abundant compassion, supports the fallen, heals the sick, releases the confined, and maintains faith to those asleep in the earth. Who is like you, master of mighty deeds, and who is comparable to you, the ruler who causes death and restores life, and makes salvation sprout, and you are trustworthy to revive the dead. Before I begin reading from the beautiful life history of our beloved Marianne, that the family was so kind to spend with me on Erev Shabbos, Erev Yom Tov, to recount her beautiful life, her life story, and the Yibad L'chaim Tovim Aruchim, the doctor, who should live long for many years, their story together, such a beautiful story. I want to tell you that for the years at Menorah Park of late, I've had such a privilege to be able to see the way Dr. Irwin, our beloved Yitzchak, and his beloved Malka Zichrona Levracha interacted with each other. To be a witness to the doctor coming multiple times a day, dedicated, spending time together. Family saw it, Mark saw it, we saw it together. And it was such an elevating thing to see. I remember I once told Doctor, I said, I'm a chassid of yours. I'm one of your chassidim. You're my Rebbe, and how you take such good care, such love of your spouse. And I believe truly and firmly that his dedication, which was a reflection of his love for her, extended her life by years. Really years. Because when I first met them at Heights, she was very sick at that time. And yet somehow she rebounded and she thrived, really, so exceptionally. And then to come and see the symmetry in the kind of person that she was and the way she left us. Her name is Malka, a queen. And we think of the days of awe, when our purpose on this world is to proclaim God Melech. And she was a Malka. And she leaves us now at the culmination of all the high holidays, at the culmination of Sukkot, when we go outside to integrate the lessons of the high holidays into our daily lives. We go into a hut, we say we're living in a house, but we're going to acknowledge God is over us and watching us. That's why we have the schach that covers us. It's temporary, so to speak. It's not a vessel. It's not attached to the ground. It's not nature that protects us. It's not human hands that protect us. It's solely God. And that's what we learn in these days. And to think about, we'll see that the doctor met Malka at a dance called Harakida. That's where they met. That was the shidduch, the shadchan. They wanted to be with other Jews to perpetuate our faith and traditions. So the Dr. Yitzchak ben Yaakov, right? And Malka Bas Moshe, they got together at a Rakida. And I was just astounded. What did all of Israel do these days between her passing on the holy day of Hoshana Rabbah and today? Everybody was dancing. Simchas Torah, the dance of the Torah. And then I thought about their names. Malka and Yitzchak. It's Mem Yud. Me. Me is who? And these are the days when we proclaim, Mi hu zev yezehu. Who is the one that we're here to represent on this earth? Zekeli v'anvehu. It's our God. And so together, they revealed God's presence on earth. And if you look at it the other way, Yitzchak and Malka, you get Yam. The Yam. What is the Yam? You ask the yeshiva bach will say the Yam HaTalmud, the sea of Talmud. So that the crown of our people is the 5 books of Moses, of Moshe, Malka Bas Moshe, right? That's what it was, Simchas Torah. And which Torah did we celebrate? Torah's Moshe. So all of Israel is dancing and celebrating yesterday Torah's Moshe, her father Moshe. And she has, I believe, a grandson Moshe as well, right? And so we're celebrating Moshe. But what's the essence of our Torah? Not the written Torah, because other faiths have taken the written Torah from us. But what they don't have is the Yam HaTalmud, the oral Torah, the Torah Sheba'al Peh. That's what makes the people of Israel special. And when you talk about the Torah Sheba'al Peh, you talk about Yaakov, her father-in-law, Yaakov. Yaakov was the forefather that stood for Torah. Abraham was chesed, kindness. Kindness was unimaginably great, Abraham, but it wasn't enough to build the people of Israel, because kindness could be distorted. Some evil person can come along and say, I want to be kind and perfect humanity. I'm going to rid humanity of all the Jews, because the Jews are degenerate. I'll do a kindness. And so Yamach Shemo V'Zichro in Germany, he built a museum to show why Jews are degenerate, and he's doing humanity a kindness. So kindness can be distorted. Yitzchak was avodah, servitude. But servitude can be distorted. We could serve the wrong things. Of course, our forefather Yitzchak gave his life on the Akedah, ready to give his life for God. But that wasn't enough. What completed the people of Israel was the Yam HaTalmud, the Malka and Yitzchak, the Yitzchak and Malka, the Talmud, the Torah. The Torah is law. What was Mary Ann's specialty? Law. The Torah is law. That's the translation of the word Torah, law. And the law cannot be distorted. It can be studied and learned. And as much as we dedicate ourselves to the law, which was yesterday, Simchas Torah, celebrating the law, nothing could overcome us after we had our patriarch Yaakov. Yaakov stood for the Torah. And that's why when the evil angel wanted to wrestle with one of our forefathers, who did he wrestle with? Not Abraham, not Isaac. Remember, he tried to wrestle with Jacob and overthrow him, because he knew once the people of Israel would have the Torah, we would be permanent. So these are the great lessons that we have. And one final thought, if I may. Yesterday is a very mysterious day, the day before Shmini Atzeres. It's a special Yom Tov, but it's very vague, you know. Some people in the Shmona Esrei, in the Amidah, they say, thank you, God, for giving us, we celebrate Shmini Atzeres HaChag Hazeh. Some people say Chag Shmini Atzeres Hazeh. Some people won't even call it a Chag, because the Torah does not use the word Chag, holiday, it's Shmini Atzeres. So the Talmud, the Yam, struggles to understand what is Shmini Atzeres. And it says, it's not a holiday in and of itself. It's a message, the beloved relationship between God and the people of Israel. We had a Rosh Hashanah. We had a Yom Kippur. We had a Sukkot. Each one stood for another lofty spiritual height. And God is not ready to leave us and doesn't want us to leave him without a special goodbye. So God says, Ikli me, stay with me one more day. So Shmini Atzeres is taking leave of God. It's celebrating all of the holidays, all of the lessons, taking everything that we've gained in these days and integrating it into our lives. And so God says, stay with me an extra day. And that's when our loved one departed. And she leaves us today is Isru Chag. It's still a flavor of the holiday, Isru Chag. We have that lesson that God loves us so much and wants always to be with us and that we should be with God. And so she leaves us that lesson today as we take leave of our loved one, Mary Ann. She stayed with us a number of extra days. Normally we would bury someone earlier, but she stayed. She honored the holiday, the Sabbath and the Simchas Torah. She paid honor that way, and her family did. And so she leaves us the great lessons of the high holidays, a giant that we must all strive to emulate. Malka Bas Moshe, Mary Ann, Mickey Rabin, a fun nickname. She was called Mickey ever since her younger days. She passed away on Hoshana Rabbah. Her yahrzeit will always be the 21st day of Tishrei. She was born to Maurice, Moshe, and Rose Charmanik. Maurice was Franklin. The family name had been Franco and became Franklin in America. Maurice was born on the Lower East Side in 1891. And Rose was born in Warsaw in 1903. They were married January 10th in 1922 in St. Louis. Maurice was a very hard worker. He worked in construction. He had a trailer business, and his wife Rose helped her husband with the trailers. In her 80s, Malka's mother Rose was still translating Yiddish letters for people that would receive letters from the old country, doing chesed, doing kindness. Imagine you get a letter from your loved one and you don't know what it says. So she dedicated herself to helping other people. She would translate letters. They moved to Kansas City, Missouri, and 2 girls were born in Kansas City, Missouri, and sadly both passed away. Annette was born in 1922, a sibling of Mary Ann, of course, passed away in 1925, and Gloria Ree was born 1926, passed away 1928. So we imagine the family said, Meshana Mokom, Meshana Mazal. We change our place, we'll change our mazel. They moved to St. Louis. Arlene was born in 1929, Sydney in 1930, and our beloved Malka Mary Ann Mickey was born June 1st of 1934. And later she'd be worthy to have a daughter, Kathy, born on that very same day. A great simcha in the family. That's a pretty good birthday present, Kathy. I don't know if we could outdo that, to be honest with you. University City is where the family lived, 1058 Jackson Street. Mary Ann attended elementary schools and high school. She was voted the most likely to succeed. And an amazing story, when she was 3 or 4, her sister, older sister Arlene, was taking lessons, piano lessons. And the parents noticed when Arlene walked away from the piano, little Mickey walked up and started to play the symphony. She was watching her older sister, and a child of 3 or 4 was a child prodigy. She had perfect pitch, and by 10 years old, Mary Ann was playing on the radio. She could not just play notes, she was able to play chords, and change the key as well. She could play in a different key on her own. When the International Ladies Garments Union would get together, she played for their gatherings. And at this point in her life, something special happened. There was someone named Harold Lanoff that was a friend of a Jewish young man named Erwin R. Rabin. And Lanoff said, Rabin, why don't you come with me? We'll go to Camp Hawthorne together, a Jewish Federation camp. And they were in that Jewish Federation camp, a place where we could be with each other and strengthen each other in our Judaism. And then Erwin followed along to a group called Harakida, which means a dance group. And there he came to Harakida, and he saw Mickey at age 16 playing the piano. It was around 1950, playing the piano. And from that time on, he had his eye on Mickey. Mickey graduated high school in 1952, and she even took Erwin to the senior prom. She then went on to the Eastman School of Music in Rochester, and she was so exceptional in music that she was able, the only one in her class who was able to skip freshman theory. And of course, all this time, Erwin saw a future with Mickey. And so that took her away from Rochester. She switched to Washington University in St. Louis, and Erwin and Mickey graduated the same day in 1956. They had gotten married in 1954 in St. Louis, so they didn't wait till they graduated. They got married 2 years before that. And Rachel, Julie, was born in 1956 in New Haven town. Her father was doing an internship in New Haven, Grace New Haven Hospital, and that's where Julie was born. Were you born at that hospital, Grace?
Yes.
At the hospital itself where her father worked. Very good. Hope they gave you a discount. Baruch Hashem, see, the doctor was spreading good and doing good together with his wife. Kathy was born June 1st, 1958, on Mom's birthday in Connecticut also. And Mickey tried to help the family. She was so gifted with her hands and mind. She was an amazing typist. She could type autopsy reports, 1, 2, 3, gun them out, as we would say. And she sat at the typewriter. I heard when she left, they even gave her the typewriter. They figured such a woman, she has to take the typewriter with her. Erwin was a captain in the United States Army in San Antonio, working at Brooke Army Medical Center as a pathologist, of course, which is his field. And he was fortunate to be helping the United States Army Surgical Research Unit, the premier Army burn unit. That was the main burn unit for the United States Army. And Michael was born in San Antonio, Texas in 1960. And then Dr. Erwin went to Sinai Hospital of Baltimore in 1961. He continued getting a job. He was in the Baylor University School of Texas. He became an assistant professor. Is that right? Between 1962 and 68, correct? And then St. Louis Jewish Hospital of St. Louis in 1969. So the family was always up and about, moving forward. And Mickey in St. Louis began to give piano lessons and decided she wanted to become a real estate agent. And she educated herself in that field, became a real estate agent. Then her husband was called to Topeka, Kansas, to be the hospital pathologist. And Mickey came along. She went to the Washburn Law School, and I think she had to take the LSAT to be able to do that. And she went to law school in 1975 in Topeka and graduated in 1978, Case Western University, the School of Law. In 1978, she began her career with Sindel Rubenstein, the public law firm. Ronnie Rubenstein knew what he had in Mickey Rabin. Julie graduated law school in 1981 and came to Cleveland. In 1983, Julie met Joe, and they married in 1984. Dr. Irwin was working in the Huron Road Hospital. He was the chief of pathology. Many of us remember, of course, Huron Road. I would always take Forest Hills Drive down to get to the hospital, right? And Michael and Barbara married in 1990. And Kathy would help as well. She was in Boston. She was working with really supporting the medical field in the legal team in the Mass General Hospital. And further on would help the family in the legal field. Joshua was born in 1989, named Moshe after Maurice. And Mickey opened up Rabin, Marianne Rabin Company in 1983. Julie went to work part-time for Mickey, and she noticed one day she's going through the book, some places Mickey draws a J, some places she draws an M. What is this code language? So she realized later her mother was waiting. Once there would be enough J's, she would make her a partner in the business. J was for Julie, and M was for Mickey. And Kathy would help the firm. She was always an ace researcher and writer to help the Rabin and Rabin firm, which opened in the mid-1990s. Jacob Rabin was born in 1991 to Michael and his wife. Nathaniel Rabin, born December of 93 also to Michael. Shmuel Yehuda Samuel. Yehuda was born in June of 94. And is it Rachel?
Yes.
Born in May of 98. In 1998, the family built a home in Gates Mills, right near Michael and Barbara, with bedrooms for the grandchildren. And Mickey loved having the family. The house was built so that the family could come over. There were bedrooms for all the grandchildren. Mickey always made pancakes. The kids loved running around in a circle to her piano beat. The Rosh Hashanah dinners, the Shabbos dinners, the beautiful Seders, Grandma's gefilte fish, the Maxwell House Haggadahs that were always a part of the family gatherings, the Thanksgiving holiday meals. We said that Mickey would always be preemptive, right? She figured out a way to get the family to her every year at Thanksgiving by inviting the Mechutanim to her house for the Thanksgiving dinner. The Falks would come. Eric and Bessie Falck, her Mechutanim. And she was always so kind to her Mechutanim. Her son-in-law said, always so special and kind. A lifelong friend, the family wanted to mention Harriet Abachis, and Sidney's wife, Rosa Lee, was like a sister to our beloved Mickey. At this time, we will express the family would like to say some words. We would call on Lori, a niece, to say some words of condolence.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can get Lori on the telephone so that she can say some words. Hi there. I can hear you now. I'm going to put you on a speakerphone, and then you're going to be right into the mic here. Okay, so hang on for 1 second. Okay, Laura, go ahead. Can you? Okay.
When you look up classy in the dictionary, there she is, Aunt Mickey. She had the whole package: intelligence, beauty, love for family and friends, plus she was always dressed to the nines, accessorized with the perfect necklace and earrings. I can vouch for the clothes because she sent Lenny and me big boxes of them when we were growing up. We appreciated all of them, but sometimes it was frustrating when your aunt wore smaller sizes than you did. She was always a role model to me. I have distinct memories of thinking, I want to be like her when I grow up. I wouldn't call her a woman's liver, but she was certainly ahead of her time. She was a real estate saleswoman before most women had careers outside of the home. She could sew, cook, play the piano, sell a house, and have a Passover Seder for 20 with ease. I always bragged about her going back to law school and that my family could be proud of our talented all-female law firm, Rabin, and Rabin.
Yes.
I remember celebrating her 60th birthday in Cleveland with all her friends, colleagues, and family. You could see how she basked in the stories and toasts from everyone who shared different examples of her zest for life. She was a force to be reckoned with. I visited her in January while she was at Menorah Park. Julie and I got our steps in that weekend with numerous trips from her room to Uncle Archie's apartment. She wasn't speaking much, but we would joke and tell stories that made her laugh. When Uncle Archie made a comment that she disagreed with, she gave him the look. I think all of you understand what I'm talking about and have seen it in action. It was still Aunt Mickey, and she wasn't going to let him get away with anything. She was a tenacious fighter like all of the women in this family. She was a tiger mom before that was a thing. Her family was number one, and she had a heart of gold. Aunt Mickey, all of us love you so much, and we are so proud to be part of your mishpucha. Your spirit and love remains within.
Yes. Yes. Thanks, Lori.
us.
Thank you, Lori. So, Rabbi, now we have David, who's also on the phone. Lynn, we're having technical. We're going to skip Lynn because she's technical, but we're going to try to get David. We're going to try to get David a nephew.
Okay, this is Marianne's nephew, David Franklin. We're going to try and bring him to the phone.
Hi there. So I'm going to put you on a speakerphone, and then I'm holding you up to the microphone. Okay? So give me 2 seconds. Okay, you're on.
One of the
All right. Okay.
one of the highlights of my life has been having the chance to live in Cleveland near my Aunt Mickey and her family. She was too good to be true, but she was, and she was ours, with her grace, style, strength, talent, all with a sense of humor and a big heart. In Cleveland, we enjoyed how Mickey would bring the family together for brisket, mac and cheese, and her apple cake. We loved how Erwin and Mickey opened their house and their heart to get to know our growing girls, Noah and Hallel, and give them a glimpse of what it was like when we all lived together in St. Louis. I loved how much she reminded me of our grandparents and how loving she was and how much it meant for me to sit down with her and sing while she played songs by ear. I've always felt that I had an ace in my back pocket. When we moved to Cleveland, the synagogue acquired both a rabbi and a high holiday playing piano player and a cheerleader aunt. Mickey's brother, Sidney, was my father. He was a sensitive man in an era where there wasn't a lot of room to be sensitive. I remember overhearing him cry over the phone, telling his sister Mickey, when his daughter Susan had taken her life 36 years ago. He stoically had been keeping it all together. Finally, with Mickey, he could let it go. Having lived out of town, she always knew where home was and came back to St. Louis for 2 weeks to run the kitchens during Shiva and helped our family put the pieces back together. With an apron in hand, she stepped out of her role as the successful lawyer who lived away and became the center of the family who needed her. In taking care of our grandparents, she was always a partner with Arlene and my parents, being the engaged daughter just a phone call away. Mickey and my dad were thick as thieves. Sidney would drag her to all his Cub Scout meetings when they were little. When my father died, she wailed without end. When she loved hard. In her law practice or her family, she modeled how to be there for another person, which is no small thing. In a family of strong women, my wife, Rona, said that Mickey was the strongest woman she had ever met. She was a model of how to love, how to live, how to fight for the life you want, and for your family. We loved watching how Erwin and Mickey held on to the smug they found all the way back at Camp Hawthorne. In this past period, the Rabins were devoted to Mickey. Her smile, sense of humor, and strong opinions shone through her physical limitations. She was fortunate to have raised a strong, connected family that surrounded her in Cleveland, worked with her, and lived as nearby as possible. No one wanted to be far away from her. She was too good to be true, and we all knew it. Boy, were we lucky. We're sure going to miss you.
Thanks, that's beautiful, David. So, Rabbi?
Okay, now who's going to speak next?
I think it's Josh, so the other speakers are going to come up.
Little caterpillar.
Okay. Oh, look at the little caterpillar. I think it's Joshua, so the other one, the other people are here.
So we're going to introduce you.
Okay, Josh. Okay.
Let me just say.
Yeah, he's going to say that. He's going to give you a little introduction.
Okay. At this time, we're going to hear from grandson Joshua, and the others are here. The others will all be here. We'll hear in person. And as I was standing there, this caterpillar just walked right up to me.
A little caterpillar.
Unbelievable, yes. Okay.
So I'm Josh, and I want to make it clear too, I worked with my younger brother on the speech. He couldn't be here, but we'll take credit together. I guess I had to start off. I have to imagine that if Grandma were here right now, she'd fix my tie up ever so slightly. She'd lick her thumb, get the schmutz off my face, and maybe, probably, she'd come prepared with a comb just to make sure my hair curled over to the side, because that's just how Grandma was towards us kids. You know, when I think about Grandma, she was so exceptionally talented at building relationships. I've never, ever met anyone in my life with more friends than my Grandma Mickey. She just loved other people, and other people absolutely loved her. I can remember so clearly, I used to visit their law offices, and this bizarre thing would happen walking between Public Square. I think the courthouse there is on Superior, but we would go for a walk, and Grandma would know everyone. And it was really just the oddest thing. But if I was there, she was just so happy to introduce me to who knows who. It was just the most remarkable thing. As been mentioned before, Grandma was an incredible musician. And there's this story that I absolutely love. She used to play piano really just for fun. She would play piano for the Gates Mills Players, I think they were called. And there was one day, and they were getting really close to the show, and Grandma had not bothered to practice. And I looked at Grandma, and I think in my head, channeling my inner Grandma Mickey, I said, aren't you going to practice? The show is coming up. And Grandma said, trust me, it's going to be okay. And in an evening, I kid you not, in an evening, Grandma learned an entire Broadway play. And I was not there, but trust me, she performed better than anyone at that show. Note to self, never ever doubt Grandma Mickey. I think another story my brother and I just absolutely love. We were young children, and we had just finished dinner. And we said, Grandma, can we go play ping pong? And Grandma was just aghast. She said, ping pong now? We have a family sing-along. And my brother and I were disappointed, but I look at her life, and I listen to everyone speak and I just see how much joy the music and the singing brought to everyone. And I can look back now and just laugh at that disappointment and really cherish in those times together. My brother added, this is so perfect. My brother added, the day he knew he would never be a trumpeter was when Grandma said, "You don't sound right. You don't sound right." You know, moving on. Absolutely, the most incredible thing about Grandma, she was the most vital person I've ever met. And the way I've always thought about it, if only I could have like just some slim bit of that vitality, how successful I would be. And I remember one day I was at her kitchen table and I was drinking coffee. Something about coffee, I need that momentum. And I said, "Grandma, where do you get this energy?" And she was always drinking iced teas. Iced teas fueled Grandma. She was sipping her iced tea and she said, "My mother was like this." Like, it was no big deal. My mother was like this. It was the most unexceptional thing to her to live in this active way. And that just always stuck with me. And I guess my last story here, it's, God, when we were kids, me and Jacob and Fan and my brother, those are my cousins. And we would have sleepovers at Grandma Mickey's house. And I would say we were some pretty rambunctious boys. We were young, but Grandma she just cherished it. She just absolutely, absolutely loved it. And she would always make us pancakes. And as my brother said, like, it was really the normal mix, but something about Grandma making them was special. And I could see on everyone's face, just everyone who knew Grandma, there was something so special about her. Something really, really, really remarkable. And I just feel so privileged to have known her. I read a quote that was in a different context, but I'd like to read it. It was from Isaac Newton, of all people. But it said, "If I have seen further, it's by standing on the shoulders of giants." And I just hope you understand that as a child, to see someone like that, I mean, Grandma was just a giant. I feel so blessed to have known her. And I'll always miss her and love our time together.
At this time, we would call her daughter-in-law, Barbara, to say a few words.
As Mickey's daughter-in-law, I feel very grateful that she was in my life and my mother-in-law. I really feel like I won the lottery in the mother-in-law department. Of course, I already had a great mother, but there's nothing like a Jewish mother who loves to shop. I learned about Mickey's skill and love of shopping my first year of marriage. I believe she looked at the sad state of my shoes and decided to take me shoe shopping. So there we were at the Saks shoe department, and we had all these shoes out in front of us. And she asked me which ones I liked best. And I could not decide, or maybe I was still in shock because I was in this wonderful situation. And I said, I like them all. And so she bought me all the shoes. I believe there was about 4 to 5 pairs of shoes. I was incredulous. But at the same time, I felt guilty, but I did not know how to decide. As an Irish Catholic, I really wasn't sure if Mickey was going to accept me as a daughter-in-law. I remember saying to my then boyfriend at the time, Michael, I don't think we can get married because I'm worried about your mother. And he said to me with all certainty, similar to her certainty, don't worry about Ma, I'll take care of it. And I suppose he did, because 30 years later, here we are. The difference in religion really never was a contention between Mickey and I. Although early on she wanted me to take the kids to temple services regularly. But I said to her, Mom, I'm already going to church every week. I just can't do that too. And so she understood and never brought it up again. However, I respect and admire the Jewish faith and culture. And I think that she recognized that. My children were blessed to participate in all the many wonderful meals and gatherings she held for Passover, Rosh Hashanah, Hanukkah, and so on. I have so many fond memories of all of these traditional gatherings, which she would be so inclusive by inviting many friends and colleagues as well. As much as Mickey could be very daunting with all her accomplishments and energy, her true strength and power was in her compassion and being kind and inclusive. She rocked these feminine power traits. As far as Mickey goes, one would be in a much better situation being on her team and receiving these beneficial traits versus not being on her team. I believe many lawyers were probably not so happy to have her on the other side of the court in her case. When Mickey was on your side,
sending stuff on my Flipco,
always there for you.
and working on my Medicaid, Medicare.
I really don't know how she did it all.
Costco and cut
I learned early on that she was just a force of nature. I often would feel so inadequate as I was trying to measure up to her, and I often said to my husband, "You expect too much of me. I can't be like your mother." Here she was being the matriarch of the family, working 70-hour work weeks and looking good at the same time. And so if I could say one word that would describe Mickey, it would be passion. With Mickey, there was no medium ground, really. It was either totally on or off, and she was usually on. I recall once being outside her house when she arrived home from work. When Mickey pulled into the driveway, her music was blaring like a teenager's. As she got out of her zippy Mercedes, I said to her, "Mom, that music's pretty loud." And she looked at me with indignation and said, "Well, it's Rachmaninoff," and briskly walked into the house. This love of passion for her music, of course, was a huge part of her life, as she was such a talented keyboard player and musician, and we all benefited from it. Her passion in life reminds me of a quote I love from Ernest Hemingway. "In going where you have to go, and doing what you have to do, and seeing what you have to see, you'll dull and blunt the instrument you write with. But I would rather have it bent and dull and know I had put it to the grindstone again and hammer it into shape and put a whetstone to it and know that I had something to write about than to have it bright and shiny and nothing to say or smooth and well oiled in the closet but unused." The instrument of Mickey was constantly in use and getting worn down, mostly by her passionate caring for others. And I witnessed this wear and tear as I was privileged to have her for a physical therapy patient after some injuries and surgeries. She was one of the top, if not the top, of all my patients with her ability to listen and participate. She was all in. But it was not her nature to put herself first and practice self-care. With all this care and love she showed for others, in the words of Marjorie Williams in the book The Velveteen Rabbit, you could say she was becoming more real. In the book The Skin Horse in the Nursery talks about how one becomes real. The skin horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath. And most of the hairs in his tail had been pulled out to string bead necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long succession of mechanical toys arrive to boast and swagger, and by break their mainsprings and pass away. And he knew that they were only toys and would never turn into anything else, for nursery magic is very strange and wonderful. And only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced like the skin horse understand all about it. "What is real?" asked the rabbit one day when they were lying side by side near the nursery fender before Nana came to tidy the room. "Does it mean having things that buzz inside you with a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you when a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real." "Does it hurt?" asked the rabbit. "Sometimes," said the skin horse, for he was always truthful. "When you're real, you don't mind being hurt." "Does it happen all at once, like being wound up?" he asked, "or bit by bit?" "It doesn't happen all at once," said the skin horse. "You become. It takes a long time. And that's why it doesn't happen often to people who break easily or have sharp edges or who have to be carefully cut. Generally, by the time you are real, most of your hair has been left off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. I suppose you are real, said the rabbit, and then he wished he had not said it, for he thought the skin horse might be sensitive, but the skin horse only smiled. The boy's uncle made me real, he said, and that was a great many years ago, but once you're real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts for always. Mickey was always beautiful and glamorous, and like the Velveteen Rabbit, she loved and let others love her in return. She was real. She was the real deal. I'll miss you and love you forever, Mom.
Jacob, before I speak, Jacob, a grandchild, also wanted to say a few words, and then I'll.
This is Jacob, grandchild, will say a few words.
Well, all my family knows I'm not a man of many words, and I didn't prepare this, so excuse me if I stumble through it. But you know, I was very close with Grandma. Literally, we lived next door to each other for over 20 years, and you know, it was more than that. Obviously, with Grandma and Grandpa, I had you know, a second home. I was always welcome there until about 9:30 when Grandpa was going to bed and told me I had to turn the TV off and go home. You know, I think many people know Grandma for her professional accomplishments and her talent, and that certainly rubbed off on me. You know, she taught me a lot about manners, especially because I think those were lacking when I was younger. I think the worst scolding I got from her, I think, when I was helping downtown at the law office. I walked out of the elevator before her, and she got very angry and told me that a man never walks out of the elevator before a lady, and I never did that again. I think and I was living with Grandma and Grandpa after college. When she had her stroke, I think the last conversation I had with her was she was lecturing me about keeping the upstairs clean and making sure to put the toilet paper on the toilet roll. But I think, you know, many people know Grandma for her talent and professional accomplishments. You know, how I remember her, she, you know, she cared so much about us, her family. You know, she had very strong opinions, usually correct opinions, and she wouldn't hesitate to let you know. But she didn't, even if there was a difference of opinion, she didn't treat you any differently in the end. And you know, she loved all of her family unconditionally, and that's how, what I feel is most important to remember about Grandma.
her daughter, Julie Rabin Falck, say a few words.
So many people have said so many kind words about Mom, and so our family. It's really special, and I had a unique perspective on Mom because not only is she my mom, but for 27 years we worked together in the practice of law. It was a privilege. I first started to work with Mom in 1989 after Josh was born. Needless to say, she was a very understanding employer when childcare issues arose. In other ways too, things were a bit different than a normal employer-employee relationship. Early on, when I was going to consult with her about a legal matter, I remember telling opposing counsel, I need to talk to my mom about that. Well, that's a response they didn't hear every day. After that, Mom and I agreed that I would call her Mickey at the office. Mom was my law partner, but of course, always my mom. As you know, she was immaculately dressed and expected me to be the same. I did not always measure up to standards, and she did not hesitate to let me know if I fell short. But unlike most law partners, if she felt my wardrobe was inadequate, she would suggest that we go to Saks with her credit card, of course. In fact, I have notified Saks of her passing, and they are also sitting Shiva for her this week. Many of us might tell of the time that their parent called the Little League coach or teacher to complain that their child was being treated unfairly. In our case, after I endured an unusually rough hearing, Mom called the judge's bailiff to find out what the hell happened there. The judge ended up listening to the recording of the proceedings and had the bailiff notify Mom that he was sorry that he had been a bit harsh on me for something that was out of my control. Now that's a tiger mom. At some point, Mom and I decided to advertise to increase our business. First, we put our pictures on grocery store shopping carts, which was entertaining when I went grocery shopping, but a bit of a bust in terms of gaining new business. Then we did a TV ad, which aired late at night, hoping to reach potential clients who, worried about their finances, couldn't sleep. I had to turn it off at my house, though, because Joel complained that he did not want his mother-in-law in his bedroom at 11 p.m. at night. Mom loved being a bankruptcy lawyer and loved being a bankruptcy trustee. It was her calling. She had boundless enthusiasm and treated clients, counsel, and friends with dignity and respect. The harder the case, the more determined she became. At the same time, we had fun. She always insisted that on getting me out of the office for lunch, even if I protested and said I would simply eat lunch at my desk. As much as she loved her law career, though, and that was her calling, she loved her family. My final story is one that the rabbi started to tell. It's the story that Kathy calls the preemptive baby strike. Early in our marriage, Joel and I used to rotate where we would spend holidays, alternating between Mom and Dad's and Bessie and Eric's, Joel's parents. Josh was born on October 12, 1989. It just so happened that year we were slated to go to Bessie and Eric's for Thanksgiving. Kathy and I knew that Mom wanted that new baby to be at her Thanksgiving dinner. We were not sure, though, how she was going to pull this off. But before we knew it, Mom had called Bessie and arranged for Bessie and Eric and the rest of Joel's family, Sandy, David, and Nancy, to come over to Mom and Dad's for Thanksgiving. After that, Thanksgiving was held every year with our extended family at Mom and Dad's. And we still remember Eric, who wasn't much for housework, doing the dishes. Now, Mom, that's strategic thinking. Mom, you will always be our mom, and we will love you forever.
Her son Michael, to say a few words.
All right. Ooh, what a beautiful day. My goodness. So I've got a couple of words from my sister, Kathy, Aunt Ketzel, Aunt Ketzel, as she's known by the kids. This is from Kathy. Mom was a phenomenal musician and might have had a career on the concert stage or at the very least in a piano bar somewhere if she hadn't met Dad and dropped out of music school to marry him. She did pass along her gift for music to us, her 3 children, sort of. I say that because it was as if the family's musical legacy, so concentrated in Mom's genes, got diluted among Julie, Michael, and me. Maybe if you pooled our musical ability, the sum would equal the whole, but probably not. There's no doubt, though, that our talent, such as it is, comes from her because Dad is completely tone deaf. Mom was a great lawyer, but readily admitted that the subtleties of legal analysis at times eluded her. I did some work for her one time, and just to tease her a bit, told her that the case was such a slam dunk, I didn't think we could lose even if she wrote the brief. She called me later and with mock indignation said, "Hey, I'm no slouch. Where do you think you got all those brains?" I was silent. "Your dad? You think you got them from your dad?" She laughed. "Ha, well, next time you open your mouth to sing, think about where you got that." "I do, Mom. Thanks for all your gifts. Far too numerous to recite here. You're a wonderful mother. We love you and miss you, and your spirit will live on in all of us." All right, thank you, Ketzel. All right, I've got a few words. I'm playing wrap up here, so I'll be brief. I would refer to her as Grandma Mickey. I would call her Ma. She would call me Michael. And when I was young and she was ticked off, she would refer to me as Michael Earl Rabin. Make your bed. Turn those lights off. Put your napkin on. I think the last time she used the put your napkin on, I think I was older than 50. So it was just reflex, instinct with her. Hard to know where to begin to what to say. So let me touch on a few comments from those who knew her professionally. So many comments on the obituary site. I just wanted to tell you just a few there. This is from David Douglas, one of her attorney colleagues. Her energy was phenomenal, surpassed perhaps only by her kindness and professionalism. Here's quite a piece of writing from Barbara Smith, another attorney. Mickey was a force of nature. She loved her family, her friends, the law, and her music, all fiercely and without reservation. To Mickey, loving entailed putting her heart, her brain, her prodigious energy on the line every single day. She always stood up for the underdog. She always sheltered and protected her beloved family. She always made a friend of virtually everyone she encountered. It was difficult to walk, and her grandson Joshua already mentioned this, so this is history repeating itself. It was difficult to walk anywhere downtown with Mickey because every 10 steps, she ran into someone she knew who just had to impart, and she had just had to impart some tidbit, be it sad news or amusing anecdote. And Mickey always listened sympathetically or laughed enthusiastically. Seriously, every 10 steps, every 10 steps. Mickey was a role model to all of the women lawyers because of her keen intelligence, her drive, her commitment, her compassion, and her common sense, and of course, her dazzling fashion sense. She was a bright, shining star, and she will truly be missed. And that was from Barbara Smith. Judge Clary writes, she was an elegant woman with exceptional intellect, beauty, and grace. Linda Oleko, one of our neighbors, very sophisticated investment advisor, writes, she was my role model as the epitome of a successful professional woman. And yeah, the comments go on and on. Personally, I did not see her in action in the courtroom, but withstood a few cross-examinations over the years. But before I get to that, let me just show you this. Now, this is an interesting story. She graduated from law school when I graduated from high school, and then Julie graduated from law school as well. But the 2 or 3 years prior to this, I basically lost my mother. She was so busy with law school, I never had a home cooked meal those 2 years. But it was not for nothing. Senior Rabin, who I call the chief, he and I were out to dinner every night. So it was a win-win. Let's put it that way. Anyway, back to one of my cross-examinations. I recall in the late 90s, I had worked with Dad in his pathology business. We grew it to a very large business. We were trying to orchestrate a multi-million-dollar sale of the pathology practice to a public company. And we're having a few discussions with her about the process. At the same time, I mentioned to her that I was buying a breakfast and lunch diner in the medical building where we had our pathology corporate office. That's a long story. Anyway, her summary of the overall discussion was, we just went from the sublime, which is the multi-million-dollar deal, to the ridiculous, followed by, I'll prepare the bankruptcy papers in advance. Of course, she was right, but we did not need the bankruptcy work because, as usual, under her guidance, we kept losses to a minimum. Mom, Ma, we love you. I love you. Gonna miss you dearly. Thank you.
All the words were really from the heart. So special and meaningful. Want to express appreciation to Berkowitz-Kumin-Booka and the folks at Berkowitz-Kumin-Booka for their sensitivity and for helping to orchestrate this great gathering to pay our love and respects to our beloved Mickey, Malka, Bas Moshe, Marianne. Want to express appreciation to Judge Mark for being here. He was a shadchan between, he was the matchmaker, mentioned the name of Marianne to my wife and I. Express appreciation to the Newman family for all the support they come and they give us. I just want to close with this thought. So 22 years ago, the letter she sent my wife and I, it said, we've hoped we've been the help to you. And do you remember how she writes, we wish you a fresh start. Do you remember those words? How many letters did she send? Well, you know, my mom had died in a tragic accident. I was shattered. Everything seemed like it was falling apart. And the judge mentioned her name to us. And so she wished us a fresh start. It's really, there's no words to say. Here we are. Rosh Hashanah is the day of judgment. Yom Kippur, the day of atonement. And Sukkot, the day when the holiday when we take God into our hearts by going and living in the hut with God above us. And when Sukkot departs, we have a fresh start. God has given us a fresh start, a new year to make a fresh start from here on in. And so perhaps we'll all take into our heart the great woman, Malka Bas Moshe, how she lived and the great things she accomplished together with her husband to stay together through thick and thin, to be so supportive, to watch the doctor's devotion to his wife. I hope I'll be a better spouse. I hope I'll be a better human being. I've got a fresh start after the holidays. You all have a fresh start. Zichra Baruch, may her memory be a blessing. At this time, I'm going to remain. The cemetery will bring the vault cover, and I personally will remain and stay. Rabbi Hirschfeld has ruled that the Aron itself is a form of burial, so certainly the family can leave, and we're going to make 2 rows for the mourners to walk in between, and we will say, may the omnipresent comfort you amongst the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Of course, if someone would insist on staying from afar, but it's really not necessary, I'm committed to staying.
You can ask friends to form the 2 rows.